No, I just really want to greet the guys all over the world, really. I mean, I'm so attached to you guys with such fond memories of you in different moments in time that, looking at Andrew himself on the other side of the screen is like such a pleasure. Because there's such a band of brothers, and we spent, especially some of us, spent 12 years together. Like people like Larry Schwartz and Graham Boxall, Peter Barnett. Okay, Peter went to Abbott's. A lot of friends went to Abbott's, but certainly the majority I hold very close to my heart. I mean, it's so lovely to even think about you guys being out there. I think the only few people I miss is Jonathan Sandler and Terry de Jong. I mean, I was close to both of them at high school, particularly. And Terry was very dear to my heart, And to think of Terry is like the epicenter of the fun times we had, despite the school system. I mean, we had such chuckles and such naughty shit. Despite the school, in fact, Michael Storr made fresh acquaintance with, and he was telling me stories about his experience with SACS. And I just loved Michael to bits because he was so out there, completely ungovernable. And that's who we were. We were ungovernable, especially as a class. I think we went through about 10 Afrikaans teachers at one point because they couldn't deal with us. And I think Mariki Basson was just too bloody bright. She got around our defenses and became very dear to us all. And I owe my love of Afrikaans literature to no one else but Mariki Basson for forcing me to read a whole lot of stuff and write about it. She was clever. Like this, I read a lot of Sestigers, like Etienne Leroux, still my favorite. Chris Barnard and Jan Rabie, and who I actually met through knowing Jack Cope. I met Jan Rabie and Ace Krieger in the flesh, and they could talk a hind leg off a donkey, those two. Jan was amazing. I edited part of my 40-year editing career. I edited a book book on Eric Loubser, the artist, the fine artist. And Eric was in Paris in 1957 studying under Ferdinand Leger. And there was a bang at the door, and there was Jan Rabie, barefoot in Paris, golfwood. And he said, he stuck his hand out to Eric and he said, "Hello, ex Jan, ek soek twak." These guys were very different people. And I was really fortunate in high school because I sat at table with these people. And also Ian Golden's mother, Alice, who was friends with a whole bunch of, and then if you remember, I went out briefly with Gaby Wengro from Westerford, and her house had a lot of artists in it as well. So I had a very, very, I mean, I look back in the 70s, I think, cripes, I was so privileged in so many respects. And if I had a vague interest in a career, my dad would pull some professional into it and chat to me, the head of McCann Erickson, if I expressed interest in advertising. Cheers. And then
this is gold, Mike.
Yeah,
this is gold.
Then I'm just trying to think. So there were all these people. Oh yeah. Then at one time I was really interested in photography. My dad had a Psi Pentax single lens reflex camera with lenses. And I became interested in photography at age 15, 16, somewhere there. And my dad organized a magnum photographer by the name of Leslie Mister from Canada to take me around Cape Town for a day, early morning at the docks, late afternoon in the Malay Quarter, showing me how to compose and point pictures. That was the nature of my father and my mother. I mean, they were exceptional people in their own right, And I was, so like I said, the privileges were epic. Yeah. And then the Barnett household was also very special to me. I spent a lot of weekends there. And the reason I was close to Peter and the Bashies and Stanley and Emden is because they were all in Wynberg Reform Schule, where we all went to Gede together, and we went to, and again, we were ungovernable, especially Wayne van Emden. Wayne was completely out there. So I had two families. I had the SACS family, which was you and Terry and Graham and all those guys. And then I had the Wynberg Reform Schule family, who were mostly living in Kenilworth. And on the weekend, I would walk from Newlands over Wynberg Hill to Kenilworth, hang out with Peter or John Bashew, and then Sunday I would walk back again. And then when I was playing in the townships in the 70s, I would walk down Lansdowne Road to Younger or Guguletu, or around Tipfontein to Google. I would walk the whole distance to the African townships, play music, turn around and walk back home again. And I remember so well the Cape Flats was not as leafy as it is now. It was quite sandy. And as you walked up Lansdowne or Klipfontein, the shrubs and the trees got higher and higher and higher until you got into these verdant pastures of the southern suburbs. I had no distinction, no borders between who I was and who I was hanging out with. It was this massive variety, extremely talented people. I was like a tennis match, you know, like just listening basically and recording in my head. My brother Peter was a seminal character in the sense that he came back from the United States in 69, 70. Didn't go to Woodstock, but he was there at that time and sent a big carton of records back. And when he returned to South Africa, he had a downstairs room. I don't know if you ever were there. And it was like a mecca for musicians. So everybody and their mother used to come and play there. My dad used to put the electricity off at 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, just to get rid of the noise emanating from the room. And these older guys in my brother's generation, people like Keith Lenton from Hammer and Michael Rosenzweig and outstanding Rogers, who just passed on recently, outstanding musicians. Alan Fall, that also attracted Black African musicians from the townships, including the Kwela kids, Robert and Josh Satoli and Max Armani, the drummer. And then there were other musicians from the Seapoint area like David Bravo and Charles Lazar, people that became household names in pop and jazz in the 70s. We were hanging out in the downstairs room. And that's where we formed Canabash Band. Peter Barnett and John Bashu and myself. Dave Atwell was playing clarinet, but he was banned from coming to our house because it was too much marijuana and alcohol and sex going on. You know, I remember Peter Barnett got another bunch of records for his bar mitzvah in 69, 70, January 70. And so we had this collection from my brother Peter, and he had a collection from Peter Barnett, and we slapped them together. And my dad had an Akai reel-to-reel tape recorder. And we spent weekends, Peter and I, taping stuff, very fast music in the first hour and very slow at the end, you know, or 3 hours later. And we had this party that everybody came to. I remember Mark Witston was there, and all these bodies were scattered about the garden, you know. In one state of inebriation or another. So, yeah, it was a hell of a time. In the context, the memories I've favor are going to be memories from the school, you know, like Warren Kruger throwing like a gun at an irony set up by like, what's that guy's name, the big boy? No, not Autumn. What is that big boy's name? He went on and had a video hire company. Massive. Anyway, he had a railway ball bearing or something. I don't know. But there was like these lines of kids down the playground, you know, it was like an American ornament baby circus routine. And then there were tops and cards, and there was always something going on in primary school that was that mass appeal, you know. And every lunch break, everybody would run out and do their thing, you know. And then also, I remember this interminable series of punishments for the bad boys, you know. And apart from Michael Storr, there was a Glendale character, I think it was Graham, I think, also a year ahead of us. And his brothers were these high-flying Yale and Harvard types. And here was Graham, who was not that person, you know. And I was standing waiting for my turn for cuts outside Boss Whiteford's office. And he always had this thing of close the door, which was a precursor to getting cuts, you know. And then he said to Graham, close the door. And Graham like went outside, closed the door behind him and ran down the passage. And Boss came limping out. Said, come back here, come back here. Oh boy. Yeah. So, you know, the memories, my memories are not academic. They're like, you know, Johnny Innes, not so much as a teacher. In fact, he was a terrible teacher, actually, but a great man, a great, beautiful heart, beautiful soul together, who was a friend of many boys, a lot of them who were not really happy kids at all. You know, he was counseling them and taking them under his wing and stuff. It was amazing in that respect. But of the teachers, paradoxically, Doug Brown was as good a teacher as he was a bad man. And that was the most that what gave me my lifelong love of English language and literature. I got from him because I was like his pet. He took me under his wing from a literary point of view, and I became the editor of the school magazine and all that kind. But it did inspire me for a love of literature. And I think, sure, I'm pressed to think of any other teacher that made an equal impression. And Jeff Dennis was just funny, like maths production and Collie, how you're wobbling and all that sort of thing. He had a great gift of language himself. Not a bad math teacher if you followed what he was doing. But actually, Ted Warren was a great teacher. Ted Warren gave me a lifelong love of chemistry, and in fact, it led me straight into the nuclear debate because I started studying nuclear chemistry and radiobiology and stuff like that. And and I even spoke to one of the professors, and I thought I might even do a chemistry degree in my second half of my life, but I never bothered. But I was forced to understand the subject. And he laid that, and as good a teacher as he was, Dickie Dyson was terrible. And I got an A for chemistry and a D for physics, So I had to learn physics from scratch. And he was quick to punish people for no reason. And he picked on Charles Edelstein once. Charles's father, if you recall, he was the district surgeon for Wynberg, and he had a SACS remark against Dyson. Yeah, he wanted to lay a charge of assault on him or unfair treatment. And he was also, I think, a drunkard as well. I think he used to drink himself to the state. So he was, and the other one I didn't like was Jimmy Warner. I was also Jimmy Warner's pet, and he used to send me to buy him bar ones at the main building. And then he'd say to me, put out your hand, and then you'd put some money in it, and send me to get a bar one. But other times there was a misdemeanor and the steel ruler came out on the hand. So you never knew when you put out your hand whether you were going to get like steel money or steel rulers. He was that deranged. There was much. I think the woodwork teacher used to smack us for bad joints, which it wasn't majat or anything like that. It was just like badly made wood. And I think my problem is that I started smoking very young. I started smoking when I was 14. Marijuana, pot, dope. And so my weekends were taken with being stoned. My whole school life was like one thing, and my extramural life was entirely another. And
was that a problem?
School for me was a necessary nuisance. You were obliged to go. And I was an underachiever. I mean, I always looked at Mark Witston carrying off like a wheelbarrow of prizes, and I had no aspiration to win anything. I think the nearest I got was the Michael Morris Cup for creative writing, which the late Nigel McNaught told me to avoid because he was a police spy. I said, no, I'm taking this prize. I'm not gonna turn that one down. And I think I also got the General Knowledge Cup. But these were like default prizes. They weren't prizes I actively sought, And I still to this day, I love general knowledge. I love, what do you call that? Useless information, I think friendship and fellowship, I imagine people talk about homeschooling and online schooling, but the thing that we celebrate at this time is friendship and fellowship. The most amazing friends, even in other standards. I was lucky in having two older brothers. So I had friends in higher standards too, like friends of David's would be people like Mark Witchells and Graham Brown and people like Donald Fridjon. The year above us, Brandon Platt and others, Zoli Lipman. And then higher still, I mean, I've just picked up an editing contract with Dan O'Leary, who's my brother Peter's class. And so there, those friendships, the fellowships, and they extend beyond into Rondebosch and Bishops and Wynberg, Westerford, the Bloch family and David Fig family, just people that you have. And of course, the girls from Sans Souci and Rustenburg. Think of Anne Burrows and Laura Leviton, and great friends to this day, And I can't imagine a life without socializing at school level. And I don't know whether we learn it or we just acquire it on pursuit or how did it actually work. But life would be pretty painful without friends, So that's my abiding memory. And the other thing would be the culture, the extramural, the acting, the dancing, the magazines, the newsletter. I got into trouble that I was nearly thrown out of the school for. Luckily, my father was on committee, so they couldn't let me go. You know that story, huh?
Tell it.
No, basically what it was is I satirized the school band. I did a cartoon of the school band, what the kids were really into, as opposed to what they were supposed to be into. So the Table Mountain thing was the tuck shop. It was like Copenhagen's and hot dogs and things. and the and the open book was, instead of like, I think SACS, I think it said, I had Fanny Hill, which was like pornography. And then at the bottom, the crossbar on the anchor was a reefer, like a 3-blade. I was trying to tell the truth, Kids, our guys didn't have zero interest in academic knowledge, and all they wanted to do was jaunt. And then at the bottom, I had the male sex symbol for the upturned tines of the anchor at the male sex symbol. And then I changed the motto from spectator agenda, let us be judged by our deeds, till spectamus nihil agenda, let's judge by doing nothing. Apathy. Apathy was a massive problem, and the apathy was generic. It wasn't like a few people. It's like, what the fuck are we doing here, and how long is this going to take? And I remember Peter once rode on his bicycle to school and just kept on riding. He just didn't want to go to school. He just rode past Athlone Power Station, ended up in Somerset West. Who knows where he got? Just didn't want to go to school. I mean, who can blame him? And what's funny, Andrew, is that the top bright guys, you think of Michael Storr, Glenn Ashton, Peter Barnett, seriously bright guys, they were completely neglected by the system. They were not caught, they were not contained, they were not held, they were not treated with respect. They were treated like scum. And I think that's the one thing I hold against the school, how they failed to capture people, and as far as I'm concerned, they were brighter than. And so, for me, it was a rescue mission to go in there and put on shows and music and dance and stuff that rescued people from the oblivion of going to school. And I'm not blaming the teachers or the system. That's how it was invented. It was the little house on the prairie, that thing of English upper public school stuff that was imported, holus bolus. We were basically trained as a managerial class, and therefore we expected to do this. Yeah, more better put. Yeah. So, like for me, those who failed to achieve leadership status were treated like shit. And a holistic kind of education. And I think that what fascinates me is how many have or still remain high achievers. If I think of a guy like Mark Visson, vice president of Willis Fab in New York, it's not a low position. It's leadership, high position. And also people like Michael Storr, entrepreneur, Peter teaching power yoga. These are not small time achievements, but I do want to suggest that our families were amazing families. Our parents were amazing parents. People who survived the Depression and World War II, especially the men, heck of a. And I think you can start. In fact, I work a little bit now, or I'm returning to work a bit in early childhood development, early childhood education, preschool we used to call. That foundation that's laid in the home by having a library of books, for example. We don't take that into consideration. We think we arrive at school as blank slates, but we're pretty well stuffed with knowledge and experience. I mean, my parents used to take us to the theater. I remember, I don't think I was in school yet, having to sleep on a Saturday afternoon because we were going to Petrushka at Maynardville that night. And I used to look at my dad's sock drawer, and if there were 2 tickets, they were going out alone. But if there were 5 tickets, we were going out as a family, even if it was a school. So my parents were extremely enlightened and progressive as parents. And I think that many of the ones, certainly the Barnett family, Marlete and Harold were amazing. And Wengro, Roddy and Hermine Wengro, amazing people. He was a liberal. He's a true blue liberal. And I think that also rubbed off on quite a few guys as well. This idea of being aware to the iniquities of the apartheid state. A lot of the realization happened certainly among a certain class of SACS boys, because the alternative was a lot of guys spent long time in the SADF, and didn't understand why they were doing it. I mean, they came to me in 17. When is it? 2003. 2003, they came to me and said to me, why didn't they tell us? So certain guys missed the subtlety of the boss's position, and missed for me, very clear anti-apartheid sentiment that he, and my father, bless him, he did work very hard to integrate the school and to open the doors to people of other color. It was a major battle that my father and Clive and Joe Abel fought. By the way, I see Derek from time to time. He was living in Plettenberg, and then he went. Such a great guy. And so there were these tensions, political tensions that played themselves out at the school. And I also remember that there were these guys from Brooklyn. You remember Visser and Romber from Brooklyn. So there was a class thing at school. And I remember Visser used to shut up, Visser, man. He said, I wasn't shut up, I was brought. And on reflection, I realized that their accent was a colored working class accent, because they were living largely was a colored working class or artisan class neighborhood. So there was that interesting distinction that was made in SACS. But the dominant consciousness was Protestant consciousness, It was the kind of glue that held everybody together. And of course, the Jews were allowed there, which they weren't always allowed elsewhere. So that made a bit of a difference, especially in the Old Boys Union. I must tell you a lovely story. When I was chairman of ANC Claremont branch in the 90s, became the Gaby Shapiro branch. One of my branch executive members was Peter Hartford, Dirk's father, who had been in special services in World War II. He lied about his age and became special. He was up behind enemy lines in Germany. And Peter was an amazing character. But he was called to a meeting by Clive, who was then board of executive and head of SACS Old Boys Committee. And they wanted to buy houses for people like Doodles de Kock. He was a good teacher. I liked Doodles. And they had 3 Jewish mafiosi for dinner at the Mount Nelson. So there's Peter and Clive, and Peter's got to do the pitch. We want to buy these houses. We want to attract top quality teachers from around the country, and we have to compete bishops. So let's buy these houses and give them the houses at low rental and attract them to the school. And at the end of the meal, these 3 Jewish old boys took out 3 checkbooks and wrote 1/3 of the purchase price each. Wow. And it tells you the power of that Old Boys Union, how far it goes and how wide it goes. And I think for me, it's another version of privilege, because it doesn't just come as a sausage machine for intellectuals and leaders. It's also got a heart as a school, and the heart is liberal. It's not reactionary or conservative, it's liberal. Now, other people, I call them born-again Marxists. They might protest at that description and say it's just a sausage machine for capitalists. But I don't have that black, red, blue thing. I just don't buy it. I don't listen to what people say. I see what they do. And the things that SACS Old Boys have done have prolific and very wide-ranging, So for me, there's no judgment. There's only like a kind of social history. This happened and that happened, and this person went there and they met so-and-so, That's it. But I don't speak as loudly as because sometimes you get into trouble when you speak the truth, Yeah, I think if you analyze the motto, victimhood again, let's be judged by our deeds. It's a call to action on. Look, I've just become a Rotarian, believe it. I was inducted here in Plettenberg. And I've always admired the organization. And one of the slogans that comes from that organization is service above, this whole me thing of in this Donald Trump society with me first and the devil take the high. I like to think that our guys don't suffer from that illusion, that we're very strong at achieving our objectives, and being goal-oriented and all the good things that capitalists require. But we're not void of sympathy or even empathy for people that are less privileged than ourselves. It's all so dated, the language. I don't give a fuck. I'm actually happy to use that language, because to remind people of what is true. It's true that we're not here just for ourselves. It's true that we're also here for other people, and it's also true that we have to care and share. I mean, it's not one of the reasons why I'm not a highly wealthy person living in a multi-million-dollar house is because I've given away too much. And I don't regret a penny. It's just the way I'm built. And I think that I get it from my parents, who are both extremely charitable. So it goes. So it's another version of privilege. It's not as cold-hearted, Yeah. Yeah, and I was listening to that Sting song, and there's a deeper way than this. Love is the seventh way. Remember that.
Yes.
There's a deeper way than this. Rising in the world. I've always believed that. I believed that not just from Wood, but also from that 1980s period when I discovered Schumacher and the Resurgence magazine, Satish Kumar idea. In fact, even the World Summit, I took 450 delegates to the World Summit, by the way, in 2002 by train. We hired a train, and we had one carriage in the middle that was for workshopping. But the experience I learned from all of it is that, as they said at the time among the social movements, another world is possible. It's possible to create together in the way that you're suggesting. And the fact that you got involved in the campaign is critical because it requires a certain degree of work and commitment and what's the right word? Stamina. I've been fighting this anti-nuclear thing for 40 years, count them. It's a long journey and we're still stuck with the beat. So, but I'm not going to say, oh, well, we never won, fuck it, I'm going home, taking my cricket ball and my bat, Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a sense of service. There's a sense of it. I'm not just for me and I'm not just for my achievements and for my prizes. I'm also for other folk. I mean, Chris Hugo Hammond comes to mind, also amazing man of good charity. People that are not content to make up a pile of money and power and leave. They need to reach out and help others, even if it's recreational. I don't care. Stanley van Emden said I should get a Nobel Prize. Because you remember I wrote that book, All Tickets a la Carte Keys, as well, which also has something of this in it, And I thought if I do something on the night or on the weekend, I must actually take out all tickets a la carte keys and read from that. So anyway, so that's what I've just finished doing now. I've just finished the last chapter, which ends in 89. So it runs from 1889 to 1999. It's 100 years of history through the families, like the worm's eye view, because my great-grandfather was in Anglo-Boer War, my opa was in World War I, my dad was in World War II. I had a surfeit of war, which I want to touch a war book ever again. Because it's quite harrowing, the story.
I might